Welcome everyone to this wonderful roundtable session that we have today. We are going to talk about starting new Java projects. In this special session, I have four Vaadin Champions with me, and I'm super excited about this session. It's going to be very different from our past webinars, so it's going to be great fun. My name is Mika Anderson. I'm from Vaadin, and with me, I've got four Vaadin champions. But I'll let you guys introduce yourself since all of you have such a long CVs that I would just struggle going through those. Frank, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I can start. Yes, I'm Frank, Java developer since a long time. A few years ago, I started working for Azul, where I'm focused for more on documentation. And as a side project, I love toying around with Raspberry Pis here behind me. That's my experimentation desk. Even written a book about it. And I love using Vaadin for not the typical use cases of Vaadin applications. I do public websites with Vaadin, like for instance, exposing Raspberry Pi ports and then making interaction with all these things. So I think, we can do some amazing things with Java.
Awesome. Let's take next one. Richard, please.
Howdy, folks. I'm Richard. I run a company called XDev. We are a very lively partner in the Vaadin ecosystem, providing a lot of tooling around Vaadin, UI builders, components, and such stuff. And I also run a conference called JCon, which is the most Java and Vaadin conference in the world, except for Vaadin Create. So if you want to have some good fun with Vaadin at conferences, you can join Vaadin Create in the fall, or you can do the same in spring with the JCon in Cologne.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. Simon.
Yeah, I'm Simon. I'm from Switzerland. I'm an independent consultant, and I'm in the industry for 30 years now. And I mainly do Vaadin for the last 6 years. For my customers, I'm mostly working on modernization projects, so bringing old software to a new level. And I'm also teaching at 2 universities in Switzerland.
Super awesome. Thanks, Simon. Last but definitely not least, Rene.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Rene. I'm a freelance software engineer. I actually started to use Java about 20 years ago. Actually, my first touch points were on an IBM i-Series system during an internship at a bank. But nowadays, I mainly use Java to build full stack web apps and microservices.
Awesome. All right. Now that we have the introductions done, let's jump onto the agenda and general practicalities. So this is going to be a roundtable discussion. We have done a survey, a fairly large study recently, and we published a report based on that study. And now this session is basically based or inspired by that report. And in this session, we will go through different themes. So we'll start with how typical projects nowadays today start. What are the background information? What are the drivers there? We'll touch base on the team structure, what we heard from the report, and what have we learned throughout the career of all of us all together. And then we'll talk about technological decisions. How do you choose your stack, and what kind of factors there are that influences on those decisions. A few words about the budgeting and the driving factors behind budgets, what typically impacts the budget most in projects. And last, we'll talk about software evolution. How do you actually ensure that you have application or system that survives the time and can serve you for many, many years. And finally, we'll wrap it up. We try to stay in 1 hour. It's a promise. We will stay in 1 hour. And with that, let's get started. So as a roundtable, we'll go through each of the panelists. I have prepared some tough questions. Let's see how it goes. And with each section, we'll start with a brief tidbit from the report. So how do people start nowadays new projects? What are the drivers behind there? We learned with the report that there are quite many new projects starting in fairly short horizon. We have roughly around 40% of respondents saying that they are starting within 3 months. And altogether, roughly around 70% of respondents plan to start a new Java project within 12 months from now. And quite a decent number of modernization projects were also mentioned. So let's hear it from the panelists. What kind of Java projects are you seeing today? You've been going to conferences, you are meeting with customers, you're definitely hearing a lot on the field. So let's start with Frank. How do you see what kind of projects are starting nowadays?
I think if I say AI, that most of you will agree. Not quite clear for many people what they can do with it, but still doing experiments. Same thing as I'm doing with some of my colleagues. We have an innovation week, so we're investigating what we can do with AI. And then cost optimization is also something we see is can we make our systems more performant on less servers, that kind of stuff. That's quite something which is ongoing that we see from a Azul point of view, for instance. Yeah, can we run Java more efficient on other servers, on other platforms, things like that.
Cool, thanks, Frank. Richard, what about you?
We're seeing a lot of modernization projects that I think that has something to do with our focus. So we're a little bit biased here. We see a lot of projects where you have Swing applications that want to live in a new world. This mainly has to do with people upgrading from older Java versions, and they feel like their UI could have some overhaul, and Vaadin is a perfect fit for that because the API just works great for that. So modernization is definitely the thing we're seeing.
Cool. Simon, what about you?
Yeah, more or less same situation as with Richard.
Oh.
What I see is that, as Richard said, we have all technologies, all Java versions that have to be removed, and especially that applications are neither web capable nor mobile friendly, so they have to bring them to a new level. And AI is also a topic for sure, but as Frank already said, the business cases are a bit difficult to find somehow. And these are more or less the projects. And especially in modernization, there is kind of splitting the monolith, because not the monolith as an architecture style is not a good thing, but the problem is that it's a deployment monolith and people want to be more agile. So the business should be able to add value faster. So splitting an application into smaller parts is definitely something that I did in the last few years as well, or people are trying to do now as well too.
What do you think? Is it more about the ergonomics of deploying applications, or is it about the costs?
No, it's just because they created just one application. So I'm working a lot for retail or wholesale companies, and they have just one big application. And the problem is that this one application covers a lot of business domains. And now they have a problem that a certain department wants to have a new change. And this should be deployed tomorrow, but they can't do that because they're currently working on a feature that is for another department. And so there are kind of these problems with the big monolithic system.
Cool. Rene, how about you?
Yes. Well, in the environment I work primarily, I continue to see projects that deal with digitalization, process automation, and process optimization. So I work a lot in the insurance and retail environment, and there I still see a lot of Java projects in combination with tools like Camunda, for example, or with systems like Kafka messaging, for example. So this is still an ongoing thing in my projects.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to the next topic of ours. So team structures. We asked about team structures, both preferences and what is the actual situation. And regarding preferences, quite many did report that they would prefer to work in a team where they have both back-end and front-end skills within the same team. And typically, it's basically boiling down to the desire of making it easier to work on features, having everyone on the same page and in the same maybe even location, but at least on the same cadence and meetings and everything. So things are perceived to be more fluent when having a full stack team available. But we also saw that quite many were reporting that they actually prefer even broader team structure where they have cross-functional teams with even broader set of skills, be it testing or on the ops side, you have your full-blown DevOps teams, and yeah, including UX also makes sense, so that you eventually become a self-contained team capable of delivering full experiences. So with that, let's start with you, Richard. What does full stack mean in your world, and what's your take on this kind of a team setup?
So we had really good experience with full stack teams. Full stack for us means having front and back end testers and DevOps people all working on the same project. This gives us a lot of agility, and we feel that we are extremely productive because we can communicate within the team and don't have a team boundary where we have to build a back end, communicate with the front end, and then they have to build. For us, it's usually business applications for enterprise applications that we do, and they need quick changes. They need a quick time to market, and so this is how we deliver that with a full stack team with these low barriers on communication.
Cool. Simon, what about you?
Yeah, usually full stack means that we have different types of people in the team. Like we often have a tester in the team, but UX, for example, is very often even an external company. For example, Vaadin was helping us to build a design system for the last project. We use mainly Vaadin, so that brings in full stack per se. So we have full stack and developers that do everything. And I mean, in business application, this is very convenient because doing everything from the UI to the backend helps to build a better solution. And it's also more like satisfying for the developer if he directly can interact with the user that is using your software. Because in my opinion, splitting front-end and backend makes it for the backend developer very boring. So because usually only the front-end developer gets direct feedback from the people using the application, or they also get the feedback from the testers, for example. Operations depends. So I wouldn't put that into full stack. So a lot of companies are thinking that DevOps means that they only need one person to do development operations, and that's completely wrong because these are two different skills. But currently we no longer talk about DevOps. We probably talk about platform engineering, where the platform team is kind of a service internally in the company, for example. So we have kind of this so-called macro architecture or services that could be used by the team, and that's probably the best setup I could imagine to do a new project.
Hey, that was a really well said regarding like the visibility and being closer to the actual users. I think that's nail on. If you're purely on the backend side, it feels like you're on the back of the everything. Hey, cool. What about you, René?
Yes, well, I see myself as a full stack developer, and I really like this way of working. And especially in an agile environment with a strong you build it, you run it mentality, I think this full stack approach can really show its benefits. Like, for example, shorter communication, faster decisions, more responsibility and autonomy in the team. And to connect with what Simon said, for me, full stack actually means implementing a requirement end to end. And this includes a good understanding of the business domain, the development of the feature and the front end and the back end, but also the responsibility for the continuous integration and delivery and the operation and production. So I would extend this to the ops part as well.
Nice. How about you, Frank?
Yeah, I have to, like René was saying, he considers himself as a full stack. I tended to be full stack, but it's becoming very hard nowadays. Everything is evolving so fast. So I think it's very hard nowadays to be a full stack developer yourself as one person. And if I see how many attempts I need always to improve a GitLab workflow, I think that DevOps is not for me, for instance. So I hope that most companies realize that a full stack team, like Simon said, helps everyone to go very fast, and Richard too. And that you need within one team all the people that have all these specialties. But of course, each developer has to know what exists. And then, try to be an expert in some of them, which is already hard enough. Where Vaadin then shines is that you can indeed be and backend and frontend within one code base. So if you are a Java expert, you can really be the best developer in your team that is doing both backend and frontend if you're guided by some designers that help you to set up the layout and stuff like that. So yeah, full stack. I still want to be a full stack, but nowadays it's very hard.
Yeah, keeping up with the technology is certainly hard. And
Mhm.
the more you have different directions you need to be able to keep the tab on, it's
Yeah.
becoming a major chore. Does anyone have a good example where a team structure might have benefited the team to deliver more, or where maybe the team structure have been hindering the process? Does anyone have any stories?
I can make an example of what happens if you split front end and back end. The problem in two teams, for example, because I had that like 2 years ago in a project, and the problem there is that suddenly the two teams are really two teams and not one team as it should be, and they do not work at the same time on a feature, for example. So working on a feature from front end to back end is very beneficial in my opinion. And what happened there, the backend team is first. So they created a general purpose API, and then the front end team had to work around the general purpose API because it didn't really fit the needs of the front end. And this led to kind of not an optimal solution, so to say. So it has a lot of workarounds in the back end and in the front end. And the maintenance was very hard. And suddenly some guys from the backend team had to maintain the front end as well, because the front end team people were moving away from the company, for example, and that just resulted in a mess. So you shouldn't split that, in my opinion. So it doesn't make sense. If you have really special requirements, you still can add a front-end expert, for example, who can do that, but maybe he has not to be in the project for the whole time. So that what Frank says, that you can't be an expert in all fields, that's absolutely true. I'm an expert in various fields because I'm doing things for a very long time. But you don't need that probably to build an application. You need access to people who are experts in the field. And if you have that, you can get like advices from them, and then evolve and be an expert yourself one day.
I like that. Better together. Cool. All right. That was really, really interesting. So talking about better together, choosing stacks and technology in general, we asked how people prefer to choose stacks, and what are the process that they go through when choosing technology for their projects. And there are many approaches to this, but the preference among developers seems to be that It's a collective decision that those who are actually using the tools and frameworks and libraries and whatnot, building the applications, they will be part of the process on designing, deciding on which tools, which technologies we should be using. But there are also different opinions as well. Like some people do prefer having some sort of a centralized solution from where I can, as a developer, choose the tools that I want to use. I know they are maintained by my company or some IT entity there behind the scene. So it might be easier for me. So what's your take on this topic? How do you approach tech choices, especially given your long history in this field? You've definitely learned a lot of the process. Let's start with René.
Yes, thank you. I think for me, what's most important, there should be a clear product roadmap for the technology or for the framework I would like to choose, compared with a good documentation and a lively community where I can reach out and ask questions. And in addition, there should be a fair licensing and pricing. That is all very important for me. And compared to the past, I would say that now, as I'm getting a little bit older, I'm more resilient towards trends and hypes. Of course, I'm still trying to integrate new technologies into the selection process when it comes to a new tech stack. But I think there has to be a clear, recognizable advantage that justifies the use. Just because something is new and trendy, it shouldn't automatically mean that I should put it into my tech stack.
Well said about the product direction, as it definitely sets some guideline for the tech choices as well.
Yeah.
Frank, how about you?
Yeah, definitely agree with not jumping on each new trend. Like in the last year, we had LLMs, then we had RAG, now we have MCP. So stuff are going very fast. And yeah, I have to agree on getting older. If you get older, you keep following all the trends, or you always need to keep following trends and try them out. But I don't know who said it first, but boring is good. And Java is really boring. It's stable. It's there for many years. You can still run your old stack on a newer Java. So yeah, I go for boring. Boring meaning stable. I don't want to end up where I want to build an application I created 2 months ago and it's already outdated because that's now call it JavaScript, changed the library that was created with JavaScript changed completely and it broke completely. I think if you are on a Java, that you have a very mature basic thing where you can build on. And I think that's an important thing and go in one direction. And indeed, you need to align within the company. But I think Java is definitely a stable thing. I want to, this is not a Vaadin sales talk, but I was doing some experiments this week with the new Vaadin test application. And I asked ChatGPT, create me some kind of interface and do this and this and this. And it came up with something that works. And that's, again, an example. We know that these LLMs are based on old or a lot of old documentation. And still it gives me something that works out of the box. That means that this whole Java ecosystem is very stable. And you can rely on what you know from a few years ago and still build something very good. So tech choices, stick to Java for me.
Boring, but in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way, yeah.
What about you, Richard?
Yeah, I have to say I fully agree with René and Frank. Keep it boring, that's good. I don't know if I'm getting old, but hey, I can sleep at night, which is good. And we come to some of the projects that have people that can't sleep at night. So go for that. That's healthy. But to cover another aspect of choosing the stack or making the decision what to use, I feel like the knowledge of the people that you already have is really important. When we come as technology experts, and the people in the team that are already there, they are experts for like their domain, what the product is about. And so we usually don't know too much about the business domain. We know the technical stuff. But it's usually very easy to bring on people to Java and Vaadin. And we also have projects where they don't even use Java. They use something else. And of course, we pitch for Java because it's stable, it's boring, and it's maintainable. And the thing about the boring part is maintainability is a key factor, and that's something that you have always. I know we have a section about budgeting, but getting budgets is only for today. What is tomorrow? What is in 5 years? What's the lifespan of your application? And for the boring business applications that we see, they expect a 5-10 years lifespan, and I wouldn't know how to do that with a JavaScript framework. So that's. Yeah, not a sales pitch for Vaadin, but you invited us, so yeah, gotta do it with Vaadin.
Hey, really good answers. Let's take the next question on the same topic. So, what's the tech decision you've seen to pay off, or that didn't go too well? Have you seen any cases where, let's say, a team chose some specific technology for whatever reason, they believe that particular tech is the way to go, and for some reason it really backfired? Or maybe they really nailed all the metrics and KPIs with the tech decision that they made. Any such stories, guys? Let's start with Frank.
Well, I'm not thinking about anything specifically, but I once developed a back office where you needed a user interface, communicating, getting info from different microservices, and you're having a Vaadin application within a Java system where you have a shared model between all the applications, creating our own libraries. So that's definitely something which paid off, that we stayed within that one ecosystem of being Java, and that's definitely that was the good decision. Yeah.
Choose your ecosystem and stick to that.
Yep.
Richard, what about you?
So again, we're pretty happy with the Java things that we did. There were some projects where people found, okay, let's use Scala, for example, which was not a good fit for us because our knowledge was limited. We advised not to do it, but the problem really was to scale this, to get people that are really good in Scala. And I feel like there is not too much there. I know that there is really good people, but they are all booked. So it's hard to do that. And we have great experience with staying with the same stack. And it all comes back to this common knowledge. It's super easy. And what always paid off for us is upgrading the Java version. And sometimes also only upgrading the JVM, not touching the code at all, just going with a different JVM. Sometimes this is enough in terms of performance, what you can get out of a newer JVM running your software. Of course, do tests, even though it should be compatible. It is like 99% of 99.999 of the time. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with these decisions.
Cool. And as we can see, the context matters quite a bit. I mean, the language decision might be, or the decision might not be the most ideal, but the language itself can be great. But if the context is not right for that decision, it will not fly too well. René, what about you?
I don't think I have a good example in mind for either of the sides, so I just skip this question if you don't mind.
No worries at all. Let's move on. Simon.
Yeah, have one. So never ever build your own framework. I don't know if we are all a bit older, so we should all remember model-driven architecture or model-driven development, where we build models and then generate something. And I had quite a few customers who were building this model-driven architecture framework by their own. And the best example was once I was working for a company in the finance industry, and they had such a framework, and this was relying on a certain Maven version, even I think a beta Maven version. And if it wasn't not that exact Maven version, their whole build didn't work. And that's something that really can backfire and will backfire because you're doing something that no one else in the world is doing. And as Frank said, all the AI stuff that we are currently using to build applications, for example, we need to do that with things that are known. Otherwise, we don't have enough information in the model to generate the code that we need. And for the last answer, because you skipped me, I also have something to add. It's very important to choose a technology that maybe the whole company knows about, because at certain point of the project you will have changes. So people will leave the project, new people will come to the project. You also may want to change people or add people from another team to this team. So it should be kind of a technology that everybody agrees somehow to and knows how it works, especially programming languages, for example. I mean, there's Java, Kotlin, Groovy, we have Scala, we have other VM languages, but now the question is, do we find some specialist, as Richard says, for Scala? I have the same issues with the customers about Kotlin developers, because there are very good Kotlin developers, and Kotlin is probably a very good language, but you don't have a lot of these developers that you may need in your project then. So finding people is also another thing that you should consider. And that's also, again, don't build your own framework.
But if it's not invented in here, you know. But seriously speaking, I think you had some really good points there. Always these kinds of decisions, they are really big decisions, and they come with so many different things that they influence around them. It's not just the tech that I'm choosing. It's way much broader question. And I think you said it really well, that you do need to consider also people who are coming after you. So what's the legacy that you left behind, and what kind of a software solution it is? Will people find it enjoyable to work with? I think that matters a lot. Well said. All right, trying to take this one really quickly. So when people are choosing the tech or stack, are there some things that easily goes unnoticed or with a bit lesser attention, or less than it deserves? Are there some tips that you'd like to share with the audience where people should be paying more attention? Richard, let's start with you.
Maybe an unpopular example, but only the fact that Google developed something does not mean that it is very stable and will stick around for a long time. Not mentioning any specific thing here.
There are quite a few. What about you, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, the community is key. You know, it's very important to have something that is also has a large community where you find information about. I mean, for example, let's take the Spring framework, which is around for more than 20 years now. It's still stable. It's still the same community, or it's still has a big community, and they're working on, they're improving it, and that's for example a very good example what really works. There are other frameworks that disappeared somehow or no longer maintained, for example. Also, the problem with open source, and if open source is really free or not, is another topic that falls in this category of decision making, because if you don't pay for it, and if it's a one-man show, for example, the open source project maintainer, then you may get in trouble sooner or later. And so the open source project needs kind of a funding that it will stay around and it is maintained. So nothing is free, right? So somehow you have to pay for something. Either you pay for it directly or you pay for it when it's no longer there. Then you have to replace the technology with something else because you will be alone. And Richard said it, so the company behind the search engine, what they did, for example, with AngularJS to Angular without any transition possibility, that's something that really difficult to manage. So yeah, and Java there is different. You know, it's very stable. All the frameworks are very stable. I don't know any new, very brand new Java framework around. So usually you have frameworks that are there to stay.
Yeah, battle tested for sure. Cool. What about you, Rene?
Yeah, actually, I would like to add something to the things that Simon just said, because sometimes I see situations where, let's say, third-party libraries are chosen too carelessly. I mean, it's often very tempting to just simply use an existing library to solve a problem, but when this library is not developed or maintained very well, then usually a large number of new problems just quickly arrives afterwards. But fortunately, at least I think these days we pay much more attention to our software bill of materials and to security vulnerabilities in our supply chain. So I would really like us to think twice before we just choose a third-party library just because it's free or maybe free, because it can have some long-term impact.
Well said. Well said. What about you, Frank?
Yeah, about dependencies, and also make sure that you select only the ones you really need, and look back into your project after some time if you didn't use 3 different XML libraries like I did at some point, stuff like that. But I also want to promote here Java itself. It's unbelievable how many companies and people are involved in OpenJDK, in the sources of what we run on our system. And since I joined Azul, I was a Java developer, but didn't realize how much effort is going into Java, into the GVM, into security updates every 3 months. Every 3 months, you get a new runtime which fixes security issues. Not a lot of people realize that, but there is a whole team from different companies working only on this, making sure that the runtime itself is already secure, so that you start from a very, very good base. And if an error occurs somewhere higher in a library, that it's also alerted and maybe even fixed into OpenJDK itself. So how important is the stack? Java itself is already very important, and we know that it evolves. We know that there's a new version every 6 months, but the existing versions, so these long-term support versions, these get updated every 3 months with a new release. I don't know where we are with 17. I think 17.0 in the 20s, I think. So that's so many versions were already created with security fixes and bug fixes, of course. But so that this foundation of the whole Java ecosystem is so good and so well maintained. That's an important thing for me.
I fully agree with that. Hats off to the entire Java ecosystem. It's a massive thing, super great thing, and it's no wonder that Java is one of the key languages behind so many business critical applications out there. No wonder. Cool. All right, let's get to the next topic then. Budget and things that do influence the budget. We asked about the things that do populate in the budgeting, what or become visible in the budgeting phase. What are the factors that influence on the budget? And there are many, obviously. And when you're starting a new project, it's certainly not only about the human resources that you have assigned. It's not about the cost of the technology that you have, but it's much broader thing that influences the budget. And especially thinking about like the total cost of the ownership, thinking about the whole life cycle of an application or solution that's being developed, the technological decisions have a massive influence on what it costs eventually. And with that, let's jump into the questions. So, based on your experience, what are the things that most affect on the budget? Let's start with Simon.
Yeah, the very important thing is, in my opinion, the total cost of ownership. So, because people often think, oh, that's free, I use it, but it's not. So, for example, if you use certain technology like a database or messaging system or even tools for monitoring your application, someone has to take care about it. And the labor cost is the cost driver. It's not the licenses or anything else. It's usually really the labor cost. And so you really have to think about that twice. So, for example, if today, if you're choosing a database, for example, you not only get a database, right? Or you not only get the SQL database, you get maybe much more. So maybe you should have a look at your existing infrastructure, if this infrastructure already can do something that you need in your new project. Or as we were talking about the evolution of Java, also the infrastructure is evolving constantly. So they add new features, they change things, how we can do things, and that's something that could affect the cost. But usually, the cost of the project are really the people working on the project. So if you can reduce that and you can be faster, then you will be more cost efficient.
Rene, what about you?
Yes, I would like to agree. In general, I do not perceive that technologies or tools are the true cost drivers in projects. I think most of the things that drive the costs are, for example, delays, and many delays I observe in projects usually result from unclear requirements and responsibilities, and from communication or coordination with relevant stakeholders. So it's again the people part, as Simon already mentioned.
That's easy to agree with. Frank, how about you?
Yeah, coming back to the total cost that Simon was mentioning, is if we go back to, it was mentioned before, some of these applications, they will be running for 5-10 years. So where it runs and how much servers or resources it needs will in the end make a huge impact. We had this research, I think, a few years ago, where Java turned out to be 35 times more energy efficient than I think it was Python. So yeah, it's not, you don't pay for the electricity yourself. You pay for the server and for the whole infrastructure, but there somewhere the cost is there. We've now with Azul compared the cost of running Java on an x86 or an ARM, where ARM also turned out to be more efficient and cheaper. So there are some decisions you can make early in the project, which in the end, if you calculate back all these years, will make a big difference. We've also seen customers changing to a different Java runtime, like Azul Prime, if I can promote now something, is that you also see that you can handle more traffic, more load on the same machine with the same code. So all these small things in the end can make a very big difference. So, but yeah, that's all things you have to consider up front, and maybe sometimes are hard to sell. We want to run on a different type of server than we are used to, because yeah, that's a change within your organization, for instance. But if you can prove, yeah, it will make that difference per month, which adds up after so many years into this difference, that's something which can make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in this case too, the context matters a lot. I mean, it's always the default answer. It depends.
Yeah, and like Richard said, just updating, for instance, your Java runtime without changing the code, without recompiling, you can already have more performance. So that's again a cost reduction.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Let's take one more question on this topic and keep it very brief. So let's say we are in this really, really unexceptional situation that the budget is a bit tight. I guess we've all seen it. And we are being asked that, hey, we need to cut off something. What has to go? So let's take the other viewpoint. What must stay? What we need to keep, even though we do need to cut the budget a bit. Let's start with you, Rene.
Well, as a developer, I usually don't want to compromise on code quality and poor design decisions or insufficient test coverage usually just leads to higher cost in the end. So if the budget or the time is tight, I usually try to advocate to adjust the scope of the product as well. And as you may all know, a product owner will usually say that all features are equally important, but reality usually shows that you can add value to a product even if not all features are implemented to 100%. So I would like to advocate to adjust the scope if budget is tight.
What about you, Frank?
I have no advice. The only which you should cut. I can only say don't cut on the developers. We've seen a few cases now where companies chose let's cut people and use AI. That turned out to be a nightmare in a lot of companies. So maybe cut on the tools in that case and keep the people. That would be my advice.
Richard.
I would be more direct and I would say cut the bullshit. So Rene was saying reduce the scope, but it's always hard to negotiate what to cut from the scope. So our approach is we say, hey, let's do maybe 10 days and don't try to do it yourself. Let us work with you together to do it. And let's see what we can do in 10 days. And usually we can absolutely overperform in 10 days, especially with Vaadin, because it's extremely productive. And then you got so much covered and you got a high reliability that these things will also work because you, for example, get a progressive web app out of it, which is with a front end, back end team. It's always like a harder case to build. And you get this not fully optimized, okay, but you get this basically for free. And then after 10 days, we can show something that is really working and is production ready, usually. So, and then it's very easy to cut the bullshit because then you have something that runs and then the discussion is much easier. So I would advocate for that.
That's a really good tip. What about you, Simon?
I'm on Richard's side. I don't know if you know about the book, but there was Mary Poppendieck writing a book about lean software development 20 years ago. And she was writing about principles that are coming from Toyota, from the lean manufacturing, and eliminating waste. I would eliminate waste. And eliminating waste also means eliminating some things in the process. So as Richard said, if you really can work closely together with the business people or with the end users, you can do something in very short time that really fits the need. But if your whole organization has kind of a broken agile process with a lot of waste inside, like meetings and other things that you really don't need to build the product, just cut that. And don't cut the developers, and enable collaboration between business users and developers.
Know your value stream and manage it properly. Cut off all the excess.
Yeah, everything that doesn't add value to the project, just cut it off.
Yep, that's a good tip. Cool. All right, let's move on. So the next topic is long-term thinking, product life cycle, maintainability, upgrades, and whatnot. For this one, I didn't have a really good chart, so I basically collected some pieces of information, some themes that we saw in the survey, And it feels very common challenge for many teams that staying current, ensuring that the, say, Java versions are up to date, all the libraries and frameworks, whatnot, are kept up to date. And a common reason for that is that it's always the time to market pressure that the teams feel. And oftentimes, dev teams are basically making the decision whether we, or at least they try to make their voice heard, that we want to put more effort into maintainable code, we want to refactor, we need to update these and that. But it's the business who is driving new features, sales are selling, and we just need to keep up with that. So it's always a struggle between the two. And if things go a bit too far and you haven't been upgrading too much, you might end up into a situation where you have no other choice than to really do a heavy lift upgrade and do a full-blown modernization. And with that, we notice that there are basically two different flavors that people prefer. One group is the incremental upgrades or modernizations, where the application is modernized piece by piece, whereas some prefer to go in one full go. And yeah, when you reach that point that you do need to start thinking about modernization, depends on how actively you stay current. And we see various strategies people take on that topic. Some always want to stay on the latest. They want to stay on the latest major or the minor version. But some do have like a sprints, dedicated sprints, where the entire team is focusing on taking the tool or product to the most recent version. And in some cases, they might wait for quite a long time and have to do a bit more bigger bang upgrade. So with that, very briefly, have you seen some systems, applications, products that have aged really well or poorly? And if so, what has been the reason? Let's try to be very quick with this one. Let's start with Frank.
Who's still running on Java 6 and 7? No, but that's what we see, what we still support with Azul. There are companies who are stuck because indeed they didn't start maintaining and upgrading. I think most companies who went from 8 to 11 are now going back on track. And what we see is that companies who add this to their culture of keeping up to date, it goes so fluent. Once you've beyond that step of going to Java 11 and then higher, it's just a maintenance job. From time to time, you take an application, you bump a few versions, you run your test, and you're good to go. You don't need a lot of adjustments. So if you take that step of modernizing your Java applications to something of the latest versions, you're good to go for something which will age very well and which is maintainable. So yeah, the only advice there is at least you have to take one time that step of moving away from these old Java versions. That's yeah, the first big hurdle.
Cool, thanks. Richard, how about you?
The same. Once you're up to 11, you're good. If you haven't made it up until 11, make sure that it's fast. Not. I don't mean fast in do it tomorrow, but if you decide to do it, don't do it over like a year or so. Try to make it as fast as possible so you can move on. That's what we see a lot of customers in. They started upgrading, then they got desperate, and it took them many months, and this disrupted their whole project, their whole product. You have to do this quick, get some help. We specialize in this, so reach out to us, get this done. And once you are on 11, try to keep the effort down with automation. or automation, we built some really cool tools because we partner with the Open Rewrite team at Modern. They have really good tools, and we expanded their tools to do, for example, Vaadin upgrades. There is a solution from Vaadin you can buy to upgrade Vaadin versions, and there is some things that the Vaadin tooling cannot do, and these portions that are the things that we can cover with Open Rewrite recipes that we have that are not open source. Because we need to make money from something, right? So most of the tools are open source, but these are not open source. And if you want automated help with upgrading Vaadin versions or Java versions, come to us. We have a big repertoire of things we can do very fast for your project.
Cool. Thanks, Richard. Simon, how about you?
Yeah, the same as Frank and Richard said. And for new projects, I always use, if I'm on GitHub, Dependabot, or for any other projects, I use RenovateBot to keep that updated. I mean, the point is, if you have a house or a car, you maintain the car or the house, otherwise it will break at some point. But with software, people don't do that. So you have to convince the management that they should do that. And if they don't want to do that, you can do that anyway. I mean, they don't know exactly what you're doing. So renovating the software constantly is something that you should do. And this has to do with the team structure and the mindset of the developers. So if you have a project, for example, and you're working on it and you like the work there, you will take care of it. And you will automatically move to the next Java version. You will automatically update the Vaadin version or Spring version or whatever version you're using. And if you don't like the work there, and if you have a culture that doesn't have this mindset of improving things, then you will get an old or an outdated application sooner or later, and then you need me or Richard to get things fixed, you know. But really not doing updates constantly is really a no-go today, because the libraries and also Java is moving much faster than in the older days. You know, we have every half a year we have new versions, and depending on which frameworks you're using, you get pull requests from the Renovate bot a few times a week. And this means everything is moving on, and you should try to keep the pace. And if you do that in small steps, then you have less issues than if you wait for 2 years, for example, to modernize your application.
Oh, for sure. And I, by the way, really like the analogy. That was a good one. Rene, how about you?
Well, I can only agree with the others, and I don't think I can add anything specific at this point. So just give it back to you.
Awesome. Hey, we are reaching the end of this session. So as I said in the beginning, this session has been inspired by the report, which was generated based on the study that we conducted earlier this year. In the report, we will dive much deeper into these topics that we were covering in this session. Unfortunately, 1 hour is just not enough for as broad topic as this was, but I thought this was super fun and insightful session, and I definitely enjoyed having you all here. So a major thank you for all our panelists. I really appreciate your presence. This was a really awesome conversation that we had. Thank you also for our audience. It was a major pleasure to have you here. And yeah, if you haven't seen out the report yet, grab it, have a link here, and you'll find it there. And with that, I have the last slide here, which is saying thank you. And there is also a link here in the bottom of the slide that takes you to Vaadin Forum, in where you can continue the conversation. If you had any questions during this session, if there were some topics that you'd like to discuss a bit more, feel free to do so on the forum. That's the best place to do that. And with that, thank you all. Have a great day, and till the next time, take care. Bye.